Brightburn comes to us from director David Yarovesky and produced by James Gunn of Guardians of the Galaxy, and is billed as a horror spin on the origin of Superman, where a couple discover a baby in a crashed spaceship and choose to raise him as their own. Instead of becoming the symbol of hope like Superman does, the child, Brandon Breyer, has far more sinister origins, using his powers for evil. There was quite a bit of interest in Brightburn leading up to its release. The premise of an evil Superman was interesting enough, plus you had James Gunn involved, who was no stranger to the horror and superhero genres, helping to bring this movie to life. Elizabeth Banks stars in the movie as Brandon's mother, who understandably thinks the world of him and has trouble believing her son would be committing the atrocities that he does. Elizabeth Banks is honestly fantastic in a role that would have come across generic with a less experienced actress in the role, where she brings this added level of care to a mother who's in denial, but also isn't afraid to say some of the edgier lines in the movie. But credit to Jackson A. Dunn, who plays Brandon brilliantly as the awkward kid you knew in school, always drawing in the notebook. But the role requires quite a fair bit of physicality, which Jackson seems to have no trouble with, where he gives it his all during the bigger superpowered moments in the film, while still trying to be your average preteen. The thing that surprised me the most with Brightburn is how brutal and gory it ended up being. But I suppose considering James Gunn worked on the film, having directed gory films like Super, the gore in Brightburn should have been expected. The movie doesn't hold back, and if you're someone who winces at the sight of gore, particularly with anything involving eyes, this might be a movie for you to skip. However, if you're a horror buff who can handle their gore, then you should have a really entertaining time with how over the top the violence can be, as it comes to show how much damage a character like Superman could cause to a human if he really wanted to. Props to Jackson Dunn for managing to work through the gorier moments, as I'm sure it would have shocked even him. The movie isn't necessarily worried about setting up atmosphere and getting you creeped out. This isn't your typical Conjuring type movie. In fact, it honestly becomes more of a gory slasher film, where the entertainment comes from the over-the-top violence. The movie can be quite funny in parts too, and that just comes from James Gunn and his family who wrote the movie all being comfortable with each other and bouncing jokes off one another. Biggest surprise with Brightburn is how well shot the film is, considering it was made for $6 million. There's moments of limited CG, and even those moments look solid considering the budget. It's incredible how much Yarovesky and Gunn managed to squeeze out of the limited budget, to the point where I wish the Blumhouse horror movies looked this good. Brightburn does have issues though, and it mainly comes down to the script, where the plot could have been a little more fleshed out. While the movie is subverting the Clark Kent origin, it also seems more interested in rushing through that setup to quickly make him the movie's villain, running around killing people. While I appreciate horror movies keeping things vague about certain details, not explaining everything and leaving things to the imagination, it would have been nice to have learned a little bit more about Brandon's origin and what his powers all mean, just as a means of better understanding his character and motivations. The movie does pick up a bit once Brandon discovers his destiny and the horror starts to ramp up, but the pacing issues still remain consistent throughout, as certain character beats and moments don't quite land the way they could have if scenes had been given more room to breathe, making the movie feel a little offbeat. Another go at the edits could have maybe helped alleviate some of these pacing issues. If you're not a fan of the gorier style of horror, then I imagine your enjoyment of the movie will be more heavily impacted by the script and editing issues, as I imagine slasher fans will overlook those problems, because there's certainly some fun to be had if you're into that type of horror. However, the issues are noticeable, to a point where if there's a second Brightburn film in the future, I do hope these criticisms are taken into account. Brightburn is definitely better than expected, but it definitely won't work for everyone. It's an extremely gory take on the origin of Superman that doesn't totally stick the landing. There's fun that can be had, and I'd be interested to see what could come next, but this isn't a massive subversion of the superhero genre that I think a lot of people were hoping it would be, so I can see some people being a little disappointed. Definitely give it a go if you're more into slasher films and you can handle a bit of gore. Otherwise, maybe wait for it to be on streaming. Brightburn gets a 6.2 out of 10 from me. Guys, I hope you liked this review. If you want to see more reviews just like this one, stay right here for your Mono Fix. Bye guys.